Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating and pretty unconventional critique of modern physics. It comes from a blog called Zion 2023 and, well, it challenges the fundamental ways we've been taught to think about the universe.
It all starts with something you can actually see with your own eyes. So imagine you took a picture of the sun from the exact same spot at the exact same time every single day for a year. What you'd get is this beautiful figure-8 shape traced across the sky. It's called an analemma.
Right, what's the connection? Well, that is the million-dollar question. According to this blogger, this simple visual puzzle, it's actually the key to unlocking a really deep-seated flaw in how we perceive and measure reality itself.
Okay, so to kick things off, the author asks us to make a very simple but honestly pretty profound distinction: the difference between what we see and what is actually there. Think about it. That analemma, it isn't some physical object floating up there in space. No, it's a two-dimensional image, a projection that's created in our field of view. And the author argues that this little distinction between the 2D image and the 3D reality, that's absolutely crucial. And this is where a key piece of the puzzle just clicks into place, a piece that often gets lost in physics. There is always a delay. For instance, it takes a little over 8 minutes for the sun's light to even reach our eyes. So the image we see is always of the past. So to really drive this idea of delayed information home, the author introduces this really powerful visual metaphor, what they call the observer's dome. So picture 3 things. There's you, the observer. Then there's the event you're looking at, like the sun's path. And then there's this conceptual dome, this hemisphere that stands between you and the event. Now, the critical part here is that the author argues we are always inside this dome of perception. There's no way to step outside of it and get some kind of purely objective godlike view of the universe. We're stuck in here.
And to be clear, this dome isn't just a neat visual trick. It represents something fundamental. It represents the delay, the distortion, and the frame of reference that's baked into any observation we could ever possibly make.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. The author takes this whole dome metaphor and uses it to deconstruct some of the most classic thought experiments in all of physics.
They point right at those famous train and platform thought experiments. The ones used to explain relativity. And the author has a name for the conventional way of thinking about these, the train king trick.
The blogger's big claim is that physicists, even after Einstein, are kind of performing a mental magic trick on themselves, and they don't even realize it. They imagine themselves as this all-seeing observer standing outside the dome, someone who gets all the information instantly. But the author's saying, no. In reality, any observer is always inside the dome, a participant in the system who is only ever getting delayed signals. And look, this isn't just some abstract philosophical game. The author applies this exact line of thinking to one of the cornerstones of modern physics.
The author turns their attention to the Michelson-Morley experiment. The famous test that failed to find the ether and really paved the way for Einstein's whole theory of relativity.
But from this blogger's perspective, the supposedly shocking result of that experiment, that the speed of light was constant in all directions, well, it wasn't surprising at all. They claim it was just a big misinterpretation caused by not accounting for the different departure times of the light beams from inside the observer's dome. So, essentially, they argue that physicists kind of panicked. They saw an unexpected result and rushed to a mathematical fix, this idea that objects literally shrink in their direction of motion, which is known as Lorentz contraction, instead of just reevaluating their most basic assumption about seeing things at the same time.
Okay, so after all of that, where does this leave us? What's the big takeaway from this deep dive into one blogger's very unconventional view of physics?
Well, it all boils down to a classic philosophical idea, one that the author themselves brings up directly in their posts.
You see, our scientific models, all those beautiful equations, all the clever thought experiments, they're just maps. And they're powerful, they're useful for sure, but they are not the physical reality, the territory itself. And forgetting that distinction, in the author's view, that is the fundamental sabotage in Einstein's physics. It's the act of treating the observer as if they're separate from the universe they're observing, which from inside the dome is completely impossible.
This whole exploration leaves us with a really provocative question, one that goes way beyond physics and gets to the nature of knowledge itself. If our models are just maps, how much of reality are we truly, totally missing?